Hey everyone, this is King Jordan and welcome back to the channel. I think one of the strangest things about modern gaming is the way people talk about playing the games they supposedly enjoy. Whenever Call of Duty releases a new event, adds a new weapon, or introduces some challenge with a limited time reward, you right away see people online dreading it. And when the new game releases, that same mentality carries over to the mastery camo grind, ranked play, and seasonal challenges, and pretty much every other progression system the game has to offer. People don't always talk about playing Call of Duty because they want to play it. They talk about it like it's something they're now obligated to do. And I'm not going to sit here on my high horse and pretend I've never fallen into this mindset because I definitely have. I've earned platinum trophies in some of my favorite games. I've spent a lot of time grinding rank playing Call of Duty, and whenever I really enjoy a game, I can become extremely invested in completing certain goals within it. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. For some people, trying to complete everything is part of the fun. Maybe you enjoy collecting trophies, unlocking every camo, or pushing yourself to reach the highest rank possible. But I think there's an important difference between choosing to pursue those goals because you're having fun with the game already and feeling like you need to pursue them before you're allowed to move on. Because that second mindset is where gaming can begin feeling less like a hobby and more like another responsibility. And although I'm mainly going to focus on Call of Duty in this video, this problem extends far beyond COD. Some people are even hesitant to start playing a new game because they immediately begin thinking about the commitment involved. Instead of simply playing a game and seeing whether they enjoy it or not, they begin viewing the entire experience as a project that needs to be completed, even before they've even started it. And I think that can make us forget why most of us started playing video games in the first place. When we were younger, we didn't need a checklist telling us what to do. We played the games we liked because playing them was fun and we just simply enjoyed them. Any challenges, unlocks, or achievements were built on top of that initial enjoyment. They weren't the only reason the enjoyment existed in the first place. Modern Call of Duty gives more reasons than ever to continuously log in, but more reasons to play doesn't necessarily make the game more enjoyable. Sometimes they can make you feel like you're falling behind whenever you aren't playing. So in this video, I just want to talk about a few things that have personally helped me enjoy Call of Duty and mostly gaming as a whole lot more. And for the record, this isn't me telling anyone how they have to play video games or how they should enjoy them. It's simply about removing some of the pressure we place on ourselves and remembering that gaming is supposed to be something we choose to do during our free time. It shouldn't feel like a part-time job we have to organize the rest of our lives around. So the first thing I would recommend is actually allowing yourself to experience the game naturally before deciding that you need to complete everything it offers. And for Call of Duty specifically, I think this is where a lot of people go wrong with their mindset. The game comes out and instead of taking time to explore it, players immediately search for the fastest way possible to progress. We've all seen ourselves or seen our friends look up the best weapon leveling methods or the most efficient camo strategies when the game first drops. And within the first days, they've already created a list of everything they need to finish. But the challenges and rewards surrounding a game are supposed to be additional reasons to keep playing, something that you already enjoy. They aren't supposed to become the replacement for the game itself and the sole purpose you're even playing. And the Mastery Camo is probably the clearest example of this. Every year, a large portion of the community treats unlocking the Mastery Camo as the main objective of multiplayer, or any side camo such as zombies or in BO7 endgame. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to unlock the camo. The problem is when someone decides they're going to complete the entire grind before they've even figured out whether they like the game or not. Right away, they jump into the smallest maps, begin working through weapon categories, and focus entirely on completing challenges as efficiently as possible. Then, instead of enjoying what possibly is a good game with Call of Duty, you become annoyed because you didn't get enough headshots or the challenges that you're purely playing the game for become repetitive and tedious. Eventually, even a game you might have potentially liked starts becoming exhausting and a lot of people either quit it or, after reaching their goal, drop the game entirely. For myself, I've only unlocked the Mastery Camo in a handful of Call of Duty games. And in those games, the grind usually happened after I'd already spent enough time enjoying the multiplayer regularly. I used different weapons without immediately worrying about their challenges. I played a variety of maps and modes, and I learned how the game worked and decided whether I actually enjoyed the overall experience. And the decision to eventually go for the Mastery Camo was more of an unconscious one rather than one I made one day. It kind of happened naturally, and I thought, hey, may as well go for it, why not? Because once I knew I liked the game and had already made progress through playing it regularly, finishing the camo felt like a natural goal to work towards. And the key thing was that I enjoyed the game first, which made me want to complete the grind. I wasn't forcing myself through the grind in the hope that I would actually begin enjoying the game after I've completed the goal. And I think that distinction is really important because If you commit yourself to a major challenge and you don't actually enjoy the game, then you're never really going to actually feel satisfied or have fun with what you're doing. Because if the process itself makes you miserable and you're dreading playing, then the reward at the end is probably not going to justify all the time you spend getting there. And remember, you don't need to become a completionist and complete everything with every game you play. I know that sounds obvious, but I think a lot of players genuinely struggle with leaving things unfinished when it comes to the games they purchase and want to play. A limited time event appears, and even when the reward is something they'll probably never even use, they still feel uncomfortable missing out on it. A battle pass is released, and because they've paid for it, they now feel like they need to finish every tier, even if they stopped enjoying the game. But if we're being realistic, missing a cosmetic item doesn't take anything away from you or affect the gameplay experience at all, at least for Call of Duty. I think the key thing that we have to accept, and if you're struggling with this, you might have to accept as well, is that you're allowed to stop playing whenever you stop having fun. And once you begin making choices based on what you actually want to do, rather than what the game is encouraging you to complete, then a lot of those frustrations you have with the game itself start to fade away. And of course, I'm not oblivious, the games themselves when it comes to Call of Duty are an issue as well. Activision knows players act in this way, and they deliberately add in these systems to create FOMO. However, for the purposes of COD at least, it's not like FIFA or 2K. These systems are all not necessary and don't directly affect how good you are at the game or the true gameplay experience itself. So I think just taking a step back and realizing that you don't necessarily need to complete everything that Call of Duty is offering you every single year, I think that alone will help you get that dread out of your system and kind of start to just enjoy the game for what it is and for what you want to do within it, not for what the game is telling you what to do. And the second thing that helped me enjoy Call of Duty more is actually playing the game more consciously instead of constantly going through the motions. And when I say that, I'm not suggesting that everyone needs to start sweating in public matches and treating every game like it's COD champs. I'm talking about actually paying attention to what's happening on the map and on your screen. Call of Duty is the type of game that can be played almost entirely on autopilot. You can load into a match, sprint towards the nearest red dot, die, respawn, and repeat that same process for hours. And because you aren't really thinking about your decisions, every death can start to feel random or unfair. You start to blame the weapon you're using, the map you're playing on, the matchmaking, your teammates, or whatever else frustrated you in that moment. Sometimes those complaints are completely valid. Call of Duty has never had perfect maps, perfect spawns, or perfect balance in general. But if your immediate response to everything that goes wrong is to blame something that is outside of your control, the game becomes much more frustrating than it really needs to be. Instead, try actually paying attention to why things are happening on the map. Look at where your teammates are positioned, think about where the opposing team is likely to spawn, notice which routes people are repeatedly using. If you keep dying in the same area, ask whether you need to approach it differently rather than immediately taking the same route again. For me, spawns are a good example because they're one of the most common sources of frustration in Call of Duty. There have definitely been COD games with terrible spawn systems, and even games with decent systems can produce some awful moments. But it's also worth understanding that spawns are influenced by what's happening across the entire map. Not only does your positioning matters, but your teammates' positioning matters and the objective matters as well. And if you never look at the minimap or pay attention to where your teammates are going, an enemy appearing behind you can feel completely random. But once you actually start focusing in on what's happening around the map, you start to begin to understand the flow of the match, and you can sometimes recognize that a spawn flip is about to happen before it actually does. And that doesn't mean you'll start to predict everything perfectly, it just means you're engaging with the game instead of letting the match happen around you. Which, once again, removes a lot of frustrations people tend to have when playing the game. And I think this makes multiplayer more enjoyable because you begin also to see improvement in your own gameplay. You start to make better decisions or begin recognizing when you should push and when you should slow down, learning which gunfights are worth taking and which ones you should avoid, and even those small improvements can make the game feel more rewarding. And if I'm being honest, Call of Duty is just a much more enjoyable experience when you feel involved in what's happening rather than feeling like you're constantly being dragged through matches you have no control over. You still won't be able to control everything, but focusing on your own decisions gives you something useful to work with and start out with. And the final point is probably the biggest one for me personally, and that is to be careful with how much negative Call of Duty content you consume. And before I get into it, let me get one thing clear. There's nothing wrong with criticism and constructive feedback. Call of Duty has plenty of issues, including problems that have continued across multiple titles. Creators should be able to discuss those issues honestly, and players should continue giving feedback when something needs to improve. The problem is, though, however, Call of Duty content is no longer really about criticism, at least Call of Duty content from these negative channels. It's more focused about maintaining a constant sense of outrage within the player base versus looking for ways the franchise can actually improve. Every update is treated like a disaster, every developer decision is presented as an attack on the community, and every new game is apparently the worst Call of Duty ever made. And even when something does genuinely improve, the discussion just shifts towards the next thing everyone is supposed to be angry about. I'm not going to name specific creators here because that's not the purpose of this video, but if you regularly follow Call of Duty content, you probably know the types of videos I'm talking about. And when you continuously watch content that tells you the game is terrible, manipulative, broken, or dying, it will eventually affect the way you start to approach it. When consuming a large amount of this negative content, you start to load into matches already expecting to have a bad time, and you start to load in with a sense of confirmation bias already in the back of your head. Every frustrating death confirms what you heard in the video, and every close match becomes evidence that the matchmaking is targeting specifically you. And instead of deciding how you feel based on your own experience, you begin looking for reasons to support someone else's conclusion of the game. And that doesn't mean you should ignore legitimate problems or only watch creators who praise everything. There's definitely a middle ground between blindly defending the game and building an entire platform around hating it. The COD content I enjoy most is content that can discuss what the game does well, what it does poorly, and what could realistically be improved. It focuses on the game rather than trying to convince the audience that enjoying it is somehow embarrassing. Because if you're someone who plays Call of Duty every year, there's probably a simple reason for that. You like Call of Duty. For one reason or the other, maybe it's the fast gameplay, the weapon progression, or just simply playing with your friends. Whatever the reason is, you shouldn't feel guilty for enjoying it. You can acknowledge the franchise's problems without allowing those problems to dominate every conversation you have about the game. And if you realize that watching certain creators consistently leaves you feeling annoyed, cynical, or embarrassed about something you normally enjoy, it might be worth stepping away from that content entirely. Because remember, you don't need someone else's permission to enjoy a video game. That decision is basically around you, and at the end of the day, we're all fully functional adults, and if we can't come up with our own conclusions and opinions about something, then maybe that says something more about yourself than the actual game. And with that all said, sometimes the answer is simply taking a break. If Call of Duty genuinely feels like an obligation and none of these changes are helping, stop playing for a while. Just take a step back and play something else, focus on another hobby, or just don't play anything at all. Call of Duty will still be there when you feel like returning and when the next year comes around. And when you do return, it should be because you genuinely want to play, not because there's an event or a challenge you want to log in and complete. Because at the end of the day, this is a video game. It's a toy and it's something we use to relax, have fun, and spend some of our free time doing. Unless playing COD is literally your career, it should never feel like something you're required to do. But anyways, those are a few things that have helped me enjoy Call of Duty and just gaming in general more recently. Call of Duty is never going to be perfect and there will always be valid reasons to criticize it. But if you still enjoy the core experience, there's nothing wrong with continuing to play. And if you don't enjoy it anymore, there's also nothing wrong with stepping away. The important thing is that you're making that decision for yourself and without any external influence affecting you. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it and it truly does mean a lot to me. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.